So my presentation is on Walter Tandy Murch II, and specifically his piece Marzipan, which is in the Kevin and Karen Kennedy collection. It is on display in their home. We'll see an image. I just want to keep in mind Amanda's presentation and the work that she focused on, because Prendergast was a member of the Ashcan School, and while Murch came after that time, I think it's really important to look at his work in relation to that work that was done about a decade and a half earlier, because he does have a very different style and a different feeling to it that is something that Amanda mentioned was, why is this work important? And in keeping with what Murch's work is about, I have this impression that he didn't want to make something that was important. He just wanted to make something that expressed how he felt, and something that he mentioned when he was interviewed during one of his exhibits was that his pieces, as you'll see, they're all very basic and not complex compositions, but the pieces are just an excuse to paint. It's not about the subject, it's not about the message that he's trying to convey, it's just about the painting itself and the action. So what I'm going to cover in this presentation is a brief overview of who Walter Tandy Murch is, where he came from, the work that is on display in the Kevin and Karen Kennedy collection, some further works by him, and then his exhibit showings, and how his work should be displayed to best kind of amplify what it's about. Okay, so this is where Marzipan rests in the Kevin and Karen Kennedy collection. It is in their home. It's directly to the left above the tableau when you enter through the door. It's on a white wall with a light shining directly on it, and it has a flower vase, as you can see right here. I think, and of course, the frame is very ornate. I know it's difficult to see from kind of where you guys are, but it's an ornate golden frame. But something that that's very notable about the frame to me is that while it's ornate, like the painting, it's not in your face. It's not overly kind of, I'm forgetting the word, but kind of in your face. So this is the work, Marzipan. So Walter Murch was born in Toronto, Canada in 1907. He attended the Ontario College of Art, which is an art school that is still has students now, before moving to New York City in 1927, where he studied at the Art Students League under Kenneth Hayes Miller. Some of his other students include Reginald Marsh, who we've seen some works by in Munson Williams, Yasuo Kunioshi, which we saw some work by him in the Met, George Tooker, which is one of the options for our acquisition in the Welland. So I think that this is a great work to look at in relation to George Tooker's work, as they have similar styles and similar effects to their painting. And William C. Palmer, who we've also looked at, and that the Welland also has some works that are not on display, among others. After he graduated from the Art Students League, before he really got into just this type of painting, he worked on window design, book illustration, and other public works, including restaurant murals, so really just kind of public works. He taught at NYU, Pratt, BU, and Columbia during his lifetime. And all of his work are these painted still lifes that have a very difficult style to categorize. It's been called magical realism or realism crossed with surrealism, but it does have a very realistic sense to it that can be compared to these old master paintings that that I often look at in my art classes. But if we want to focus on the image for a second, you can see that it has a light side and a dark side, which is characteristic of classical works. And the subject matter is these marzipan fruits, Every color of the rainbow is expressed in these fruits, which is another important technique that is used actually in more modernist paintings, but something that old masters really knew to utilize because it does create a chromatic palette. And then it has just this white cloth and white teacup that the work is, that the marzipan is expressed on. And so if we look at it, it has this sense of realism and interactability that a lot of the work from the Ashcan school has. A lot of that work kind of showed scenes of New York City. We just saw some work by Prendergast that kind of showed a real life environment. And so that is what Walter Murch gets at in his work, except that he also has this incredible amount of impasto, and he doesn't fill all of the space all of the way. You can see some of the canvas here. He uses oil paint, which is different from some of the Ashcan school. And so his work is, it's different. This was completed in 1945, so long after the Ashcan school, but it still has some of these elements that were very interesting and notable. So some of his other works include Still Life with Pink Ribbon, and you can see the similarity between Marzipan, as well as Still Life with Lemons and Potato. Again, you can clearly see the similarity to his other work, this magical realism, showing things, showing everyday objects, and yet still kind of throwing them into the background and making painting really the forefront of the subject. Here's some more. This is called The Spirit of Things. This is a more famous work by him. He used a lot of geometric shapes along with organic, natural shapes. And so that was, when asked why he did this, that was when he responded with that, with a response that was, I just paint for the excuse of painting. It's not about the subject matter. It's about expressing myself through this paint. And so this is another work called The Doll, completed in 1965. And so again, it's a still life. All of his works are still lives. And he uses the light and the dark side, as we see. That's his characteristic of his other work. So in his lifetime, he was displayed at Rhode Island School of Design in 1966. He passed away in 1967. So that was when this retrospective was done at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. And I'd like to touch on how it's displayed, because I think that's an important factor to keep in mind when we're looking at this type of art. So this is how it's displayed in Karen and Kevin's collection. It's on this white wall with a light shining directly at it. And I actually think that this is the incorrect way to show his work, because he uses this light side and dark side, but it's all dark gray tone, and the colors themselves are not particularly vivid, but they are all there. I think showing his work on a white background saturates it, and your eye is drawn away from the work itself. I really like how the Brooklyn Museum used these dark walls, this black background, as well as showing a still life that would be characteristic of his work, to really bring out his work. The frames in all of these on all of his paintings are minimalist, just thin frames similar to the Jackson Pollock that we saw at Munson Williams. And I think that while the gold frame that's in Karen and Kevin's collection is nice, it's not as ornate as some of the other frames that we've seen at their home. These frames do a greater service to express that simplistic ideal that he really embodied and that he really appreciated.